Oftentimes in cinema, the right set can make or break a movie. If done well, the scenery can become one of the most important features on the screen. Here are 10 of the most beautiful, amazing, and craziest movie sets that were ever built. Number 10. The Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings opened up the Tolkien universe to a new set of fans, but beyond the epic battles and fantastical creatures, creating the world was more of an undertaking than just filming New Zealand with a soaring soundtrack. It needed castles, towns, and villages to really make the series come alive. The designers actually had to scale down their thinking, and in doing so made some of the most incredible miniature models ever seen. These so-called bigatures were used when they needed to portray something monumental, including the Tower of Isengard, as well as the elvish home of Rivendell. But by far the most impressive of the bunch is Minas Tirith, the City of Kings, which remains one of the most epic castles in all of film history. There doesn't exist in this world any suitable castle that would have made a good stand-in, so the workshop that created the models for the film crafted a 1/72 scale model with impossible detail for exterior shots. This gave Middle-earth a living, breathing feel that wouldn't otherwise have been possible. You might say that the practical effects here really dwarf everything in comparison. But the incredible set design didn't stop there. For the sleepy Shire of Hobbiton, they built the whole village on a sheep farm, which you can still visit today. After an aerial search, Peter Jackson spotted the location as it was strikingly similar to the Shire as described by Tolkien, sparking a 9-month set build that included landscaping, bridge building, and tree moving. Now 44 different hobbit holes decorate the set, and unsurprisingly, tourists continue to flock there. Number 9. Batman's Gotham City. Before Christopher Nolan's reimagining and that George Clooney version, Tim Burton's Batman was a dark fairy tale set in a claustrophobic Gotham City. It was described in early script treatments as a city being built up on top of itself, kept in perpetual dusk below the shadows of tall buildings and oppressive smog. But to truly get that gritty reality on film, they needed to build the city themselves. Enter Anton Furst, the production designer who was able to bring Burton's vision to life with a huge city scene built at Pinewood Studios. Through use of scale models with a matte painted background, Furst and the team created a modern hellscape with clashing architectural styles and huge patches of bleak darkness. Furst's efforts didn't go unnoticed. He won an Oscar for his work. Batman's Gotham City remains well remembered, even more so than Val Kilmer's nippled batsuit. Yeesh. You'll be glad to hear the directors of more recent Batman films are just as committed to practical effects. As in The Dark Knight, though they didn't recreate Gotham, they did really blow up an actual abandoned hospital to film the scene with the Joker blowing it up. They had one shot, and Heath Ledger's improv worked perfectly. Number 8. Waterworld. Waterworld was famous for being one of the most expensive, universally panned movies. You can blame almost anything for this: ridiculous villains, overly long and complicated plot, dislikable hero. But one thing you can fault is the sheer effort that went into making the set. The most expensive movie made at the time, this tale of soggy people fighting over dirt was filmed in an artificial seawater enclosure specially constructed for this purpose. A hurricane mid-production caused the set to sink 180 feet into the water, and was just one of many setbacks they experienced. Over 400 extras had to be ferried out to the set every day, battling seasickness and, bizarrely, jellyfish stings. If God hadn't wanted one movie to have been made, it might have been Waterworld. Number 7. Amazing vehicles. While I've discussed the amount of work that goes into sets, we should also consider other specific elements that go into a film. Some of the most iconic elements of a movie are the vehicles featured within them. Some iconic ones include the Black Pearl from the Pirates of the Caribbean and the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. The full-scale replica of the Black Pearl itself is incredible and was built for later films. Imagine seeing this sailing into your port. Wouldn't you run a mile? The Millennium Falcon in Star Wars, meanwhile, was built for the production of The Empire Strikes Back, and the full-scale model, the only one ever built, was constructed in a hangar in South Wales. How much would you give to climb around that thing? But perhaps one of the most insane and meta examples of a film vehicle is the Ark that Darren Aronofsky built for his film Noah. The story of one man called by God to build a monumental ship to weather a storm. Aronofsky approached his set with the same divine obsession, using the same dimensions as set out in the Bible. Aronofsky's team made an imposing boat that ended up being 65 feet by 85 feet with a frame which allowed it to be extended digitally. If it doesn't look like much of a boat to you, it's because it was never meant to move anywhere. It was just meant to be watertight. What's more, they built another ark in the same proportions that allowed them to shoot interior scenes. Unfortunately for this movie, the only thing that came flooding in were the bad reviews. Number 6. Titanic. Although Titanic became one of the highest grossing movies of all time, James Cameron had no idea it would be so successful, saying famously, "I just realized I made a 200 million chick flick where everyone dies." But he's always pushed the boundaries with his filmmaking, and Titanic was no different. As a moving set that eventually needed to be sunk, designing it was a huge challenge. Building a scale replica of the ill-fated vessel, Peter Lamont, the production designer, said, "We're going to do in 100 days with 500 workers what it took 14,000 men over 3 years to accomplish." And he wasn't kidding. The amount of work that went into constructing the titular boat meant that at $30 million, this single set was one of the most expensive ever at the time. It was so big that the crew members would use jet skis to get around it. And with a final budget of $200 million, the movie cost more than the original Titanic. Along with the entire boat, they built different parts of the ship that could be winched to mimic the sinking of the ship. Just don't ask whether or not that floating door could have supported 2 people. Number 5. The Tesseract in Interstellar. While Christopher Nolan's films are brain-teasing, CGI-heavy blockbusters, he favors a practical effect every now and then. Inception was a mind-melting deep dive into dreams, but one scene sticks out in particular. When Joseph Gordon-Levitt fights a couple of bad guys in a corridor, the hallway twists and turns more times than the plot of the movie. But this was no computer trickery. Nolan had the entire set built for real. They constructed it inside 8 30-foot diameter rings, which rotated on motors while the actors were inside performing their stunts. What about Bane's underground lair? The theatrical mumbler may have been born in the darkness, but he certainly had a keen eye for a wicked hideout. The enormous set made at Carlington Hangar features walkways on 4 different levels, as well as a huge amount of water needing to be pumped around it constantly. But by far, the most impressive of Nolan's oeuvre remains the Tesseract scene in Interstellar. You might think it would be easier to just suspend Matthew McConaughey in front of a green screen, but instead the whole scene was shot on a real set. The sheer scale of it allowed the crew to move around and work inside of it, while 15 projectors gave it the eerie, flickering feel. Number 4. Hogwarts. Like many things in life, size isn't everything. A set doesn't have to be a shower. It can be a grower. Miniature sets can be just as effective as full ones. I promise. First up on the list of amazing miniature sets, Metropolis, which was one of the most well-regarded movies of its time. And Fritz Lang's masterpiece was carefully constructed by dozens of people and remains fascinating to look at. So too, the Snow Fortress in Inception was a labor of love. Equally as amazing, the Grand Budapest Hotel, true to Wes Anderson's form, was created in lovingly made miniature scale for exterior shots. But the award for the best mini-set has to be Harry Potter's Hogwarts. Though the beloved magical castle was filmed on location in several real-life castles, the endless sprawling school was primarily a scale model. This stunningly realized 1/24 scale model took nearly 74 years of man-hours in its construction and is nearly 50 feet in diameter. Nearly big enough for you to actually attend, or at least pose next to for an awkward photo. Say es Jesus! Number 3. Digital sets. Physical sets are amazing, but the evolution in technology has meant that creating the same effect digitally also requires care and attention. Gladiator, the story of redemption in an arena of combat, featured not only a CGI-completed Colosseum, but several crowd scenes fabricated by computers. The same trick was used during the fight scenes. Pixelated creations have only gotten more impressive since then. James Cameron waited over a decade to bring his vision of Avatar to life thanks to gigantic green screens, as well as state-of-the-art motion capture. Tron Legacy also managed to achieve the same effect. But my pick of the bunch is Bricksburg from Lego World. When this colorful landscape entered our screens, it was a delight to everyone. But the nerdier among you might be interested to know that the humble city of Bricksburg was painstakingly assembled virtually out of thousands and thousands of Lego bricks. The motivation of the designers was that you could freeze any single frame of the movie and be able to build what you saw. You know, if you had that kind of time. Number 2. The Roman Forum in Cleopatra. Older movies didn't have modern technology like we have today to cut corners. To construct a gigantic set, They actually had to build the whole thing and employ the extras to make the world feel massive. Notable examples of this include Ben-Hur, which used over 130 acres of land to stage chariot races, and Intolerance, the epic silent movie that saw the construction of 300-foot tall walls of Babylon and monuments. Another incredible film of its time, Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments, had an entire Egyptian palace built and then abandoned to the desert. This set lay untouched from 1923 until 2014, and just as people started to doubt the set actually being built, a team of archaeologists dug up the remains of the 110 feet tall gates, 21 sphinxes, and various pharaoh statues, getting a real shock. Still, the award for the most amazing old movie set must go to the Roman Forum scene in Cleopatra. Twice the size as the real place, and more expensive, it was truly befitting the monumental scale of the scene. The Sphinx from which she was carried down was 35 feet tall alone. Along with the two-story barge on which she arrives, the construction of the set and every element within was widely credited as having caused a shortage of building supplies in Italy. Before we get to number 1, here are 2 honorable mentions that just missed out. First up, the designs of Ken Adam. As a set designer for the early James Bond films, he was responsible for the greatest bad guy hideouts, which he built with ingenuity that far outreached his budget. In an outdoor lot at Pinewood Studios, he created iconic sets like the volcano base for You Only Live Twice, which at $1 million cost double what the whole of Dr. No did. He worked to outdo himself further with Fort Knox from Goldfinger and the Moonraker base. He also worked in miniature. Seen here is Russia during the movie GoldenEye. His eye for the truly epic continues beyond him, as future set designers on the Bond movies attempt to top it and honor him. Here's the team who worked on Spectre, earning a Guinness World Record for the largest stunt explosion ever. Also worth the mention is the highway from The Matrix Reloaded. Halfway through the film, there's a battle that takes place on a highway. That entire 1.5 mile long road was constructed from scratch and cost $2.5 million alone. Number 1. The Abyss. There's a good reason that James Cameron is dominating this list, and that's purely because of his outside-of-the-box thinking. The movie that takes the top spot on this list is The Abyss. While this was an easily forgotten movie, it's worth taking a moment and thinking about just how incredible its creation was. The mind-bending sci-fi takes place in a drilling rig that had been built underwater, and for Cameron that meant the set had to be constructed likewise. Though the film is almost 30 years old, The Abyss still has the unique distinction of being the largest underwater set ever built. They built the set in the remains of an old nuclear power plant, which they filled with 7 million gallons of water. To add to the sense of total oppressive darkness, they also covered the surface of the water with a tarpaulin when filming. So though it looks like they are much deeper, the entire film was really only filmed 30 to 50 feet underwater. Yikes. Up until 2007, the abandoned set was still standing around for those brave enough to visit, but during filming it had leaks so large that dam builders were sent in to fix them. The set also experienced algae infestations, chlorine burns on the 26-person diving crew, and electrical blackouts. All of this hard work gave the actors the true sense of jeopardy needed for the movie, which remains a great claustrophobic science fiction film. The design bagged the film the Best Visual Effects Academy Award, and for good reason. So which set do you think was the most amazing? Is there another I should have mentioned instead? Let me know in the comments section down below, and thanks for watching.